Hey climbers, welcome back to Climb by VSC, a weekly show about building and scaling startups in the world of climate innovation. My name is Jake Kapoor, general partner of VSC Ventures and co-host of Climb. Every week I or a member of our VSC team will speak with the pioneer in the climate tech world about emerging technologies and novel ideas that will turn the tide on climate change. We've all heard enough of the doom and gloom. It's time for stories of purpose-driven innovation that lead to sustainable, positive change. As always, I'm so happy that you've decided to join us. Now let's climb.
My name is Maggie Philbin. I'm a partner here at VSC and a guest host for today's episode on all things design thinking and climate. I'm excited to be joined by my friend, Nazlican Goksu, design director at IDEO, the design studio behind breakout products like Apple's first usable mouse, the Simplisafe Security System, and Ford's next-gen vehicles. She's collaborated and supported the launch of IDEO's climate practice, and where she leads a team of designers building products, services, and ventures that help advance climate goals. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Maggie. And so nice to be here and have this conversation with you. So my name is Nazlican Goksu. I'm a design director at IDEO's climate portfolio. My background is in industrial design as well as design research, which is kind of my journey that brought me to climate. And I'm excited to chat all things climate and design today.
That would be amazing. And actually, why don't we kick it from the top? I know that you had a design studio that you were working at initially in New York before you were at IDEO. Can you talk a little bit about what that really means?
So my journey in design has been quite one that is exploratory and full of discoveries as I started my career as an industrial design. And of course, as you mentioned, founding my own design firm has been quite a pivotal one. At the time, I was very much focused on designing physical products, thinking about manufacturing and form giving. A lot of the work that we did with my business partner was focused on designing medical products as well as furniture, consumer goods. That really kind of taught me the intricacies of bringing to life tangible physical products. And later in my career, I kind of had this really big pull to design research, mainly because I thought design research is a really, really important tool and process to help guide teams to really focus on things that matter most for the people that we aim to serve, which is what brought me to IDEO. Very quickly at IDEO, I started leading projects that involved multiple stakeholders in very complex spaces like ocean health or renewable energy. That kind of led me into the part of the work and the business that I'm focused on today, which is climate. About 6-7 months ago, we launched our fully dedicated climate portfolio at IDEO, where we are a business unit fully dedicated and focused on designing for organizations to transform and evolve and design more responsible products and services.
Do companies come to you that are already existing within the IDEO portfolio? Because you've worked with some amazing brands over the years that I know a lot of our listeners have followed along. So are they coming to you now? They're like, hey, this was our older business and we want to modernize to be more climate friendly? Or is it like new startups or like newer companies? Like, how does that work?
As the IDEO's climate portfolio, right now we have 4 big opportunity areas that we focus on. And we see that broadly our existing clients and our new partners kind of rally around those big 4 opportunity areas. And those are really about reimagining clean transportation and cities, thinking about sustainable brands, products, and services, enabling conservation and regeneration, so often working with net positive NGOs, and lastly, advancing climate software. So these 4 different focus areas kind of brings us in conversation with organizations from startups to well-established ones. Often we see that some partners want us and our support in designing new to the world creative ideas. And sometimes clients and organizations want our help in evolving what they already do to be more responsible.
Yeah. What are some examples that maybe you could talk to us about? Maybe like, why don't we start in the transportation space, since that's the first one you mentioned?
A really good project that come to mind that we're quite proud of is our work with Ford. Of course, as you might know, Ford has been a long-term IDEO client where we partnered with their former CEO to reimagine how to bring design thinking into the organization. So one of the projects that we did at the intersection of climate and product was about reimagining Ford's first fully electric F-150 truck. So what that meant is that we wanted to reimagine a truck that would not only be a great truck, but also be an electric one. So as typical IDEO fashion and human-centered design process, our team went on the field and tried to understand what are the needs of people that we aim to design and serve for. And to no surprise, a lot of people didn't really care about the fact that this truck was electric or not. What they wanted to know was if they can actually plug their jigsaw or have a nap and fully push their seat and after a long day of fishing. So those insights kind of helped the team understand what would make a truck a better truck, not just an electric one. So F-150 Lightning was born. Today, this truck has more power outlets than your regular apartment. And anyone that is working in construction or in spaces where they really need to power up their tools can bring down the tailgate, plug in their tools, and use it as their workspace. And that truly, those insights, really deeply understanding human needs, made F-150 Lightning simply a better truck, not just an electric one. And that's something that we really believe in at IDEO. We think that organizations that will win and succeed in this new climate era that we are in will be organizations that are not only designing products that are responsible, but they're designing simply better products.
So why don't we switch gears a little bit to the conservation side? I know that was like the second focus of IDEO's practice now in the climate division. What does that look like for you all in terms of conservation?
So my focus is actually working with our organizations that are net positive NGOs enabling conservation and regeneration. One of our incredible partners, Conservation International, have been partnered with them for over 2 years now, helping them speed and scale some of the efforts that they have around the world. We need to conserve 1/3 of global oceans and ensure that at least 75% of seafood is harvested using socially as well as responsible methods. Yet, when we're in a moment like this, 75% of the world's poor rely on agriculture for their livelihoods, right? Which in turn, they depend on nature for pollination, for agriculture, for irrigation. So in this context, we partner with net positive NGOs to help them with methods of tools of design to speed and scale some of the efforts that they have and really bring human-centered design into the work that they do, because humans are a part of nature too. And we know that if we can't design for livelihoods, we can't scale our conservation and regeneration efforts. What that means is that we bring design as a way to bring tangibility to some of the ideas that are sometimes abstract for people, where, for example, thinking about a policy and how a policy could affect end users. And we bring design as a way to prototype and speed and learn very quickly what are impacts that this policy or this decision could have on people. So these are kind of ways that we're able to bring design to areas of conservation and regeneration to better understand what are better futures that we can design.
What would be an example of how you would visualize that, of a policy?
So when oftentimes we think of a policy or a system, it feels long and complicated and kind of impossible to even test. So often what we're able to do with design is to break down the system into different components and really ask the question, what needs to be true for this policy or this decision to actually be successful? And then we're able to isolate different components. For example, one thing that needs to be true for this policy to be successful might be that people buy into it. So then we want to run experiments on better understanding what would it take for this community to really believe in this policy, or for this policy to be successful, or this system or this strategy to be successful. We need to ensure that there is local community support. So what are ways that we can truly understand the needs of local communities and design a system and a strategy that truly reflects their aspirations? So you can imagine design kind of becomes more of a strategic problem-solving approach rather than design with capital D, where we have a tangible physical product outcome.
And when you're doing these studies and research, are you physically going and speaking to people on the ground, or do you do this remotely, like with a survey monkey? Like, how are you actually going about making a survey like this to get the results you're looking for?
So oftentimes the ways that we design the programs and the projects that we work on truly create space for talking to people and communities, as well as helping create conditions for communities to design for themselves. We talk a lot about co-creation and participatory design methods. And the reason why that's important is that we think that if we bring in, sometimes as designers, we bring in our own learned ways and our own tools. But if we're truly trying to design a solution that's native to the communities that we're aiming to serve, they need to be part of the process. So oftentimes we do a lot of processes or methods that takes us to in-place and place-based learning, helps us create and facilitate conversations where communities become designers themselves and we become facilitators of the conversation.
So can you talk about a time where you were on site doing one of your interviews with potential customers or on the surveys to better understand like what their needs are? Is there a conversation over all these years that stood out to you as something that is very memorable?
There is. I think what this reminds me of, this is multiple years ago, I was doing a project about designing affordable cooling systems for India. And as you might know, most cooling systems, most ACs, have refrigerants that are quite detrimental to climate change. And one of our partners was trying to find ways to design low cost and responsible climate and AC solutions for low income families living in India. So we were set to do research to better understand what are ways that we can design reliable yet responsible cooling solutions for families. So our team was set to better understand what are the needs of communities and why should they care about responsible choices? Why isn't a fan enough? So we were holding many conversations. It was hot in summer in India in homes. And one of the families that we talked to had a fan. And we were talking about why isn't a fan enough or good enough? And we were trying to show them solutions that might potentially be more responsible than an AC. And this father kept going back to the notion that he really wanted an AC because ACs enabled his kid to do his homework and his sick mom to sleep comfortably at night. And that was the true moment where I think I realized that for us to be designing more responsible solutions, we really need to design better solutions because people, what they care about at the end of the day is if they can have the cool air and if they can be healthy and if they can serve their family and if they can live comfortably. But if we can use design to build and create solutions that is not only desirable, but also then happen to be responsible, then we can create true impact.
So how do you balance speed and innovation, but doing things right?
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that because I feel like design can almost be a tool for us to speed up and de-risk some of the efforts and decisions that we have, especially in the climate space. I see in a lot of our work where we use design as a way to quickly learn, not be incredibly precious, and test some of the assumptions that we have very quickly, put it in front of people, understand, does this resonate? If this thing existed, would this be a better option? So I actually think that for us to be able to learn faster, we need to design quicker and we need to design at lower fidelity products. We need to learn from talking to people and putting some of these solutions in front of people.
And the work that now you're doing on the software side of climate, that seems like you could also move pretty quickly. Can you talk about your experience there?
Absolutely. I think climate software is one of our opportunity areas in our portfolio. As I mentioned to you, design as a way of prototyping and de-risking becomes really handy. Paul Bennett, our former chief creative officer, always says, don't be precious. Don't design in isolation and don't chase perfectionism, right? So if we're able to, when it comes to software, it's the same thing. If we are able to design early and quickly, and we can put some of the solutions that we have in front of people that we hope that they serve, we can get to product market fit faster. We can get to impact a lot faster. So some of the ways that we use prototyping methods can become really handy as we think about how do we de-risk some of these solutions so that we can focus on what matters.
Okay, so I know that you guys have also worked with Beyond the Bag. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with them?
So Beyond the Bag was a wonderful pre-competitive design challenge and coalition that was built by closed loop partners. And IDEO became their innovation partner. And essentially, the entire coalition's goal was to find successful solutions that will replace plastic bags. And we became innovation partners to the coalition, working with startups, trying to find what are ways that we can replace plastic bags, not just in a way that is efficient, but also desirable and long lasting. So our team partnered with, on one side, corporate partners, and on the other side, startups, to try to incubate some of their ideas and pilot them at a scale. And this is where design becomes really handy, because we're not only talking about ideas in a contextual space, but we're also able to implement and prototype in place. So we turn into tools like live prototyping. We build kiosks where we actually put the bags and test how many people actually use them. And then we're able to capture in-person live feedback and learn on what makes sense, what resonates, and what doesn't. These kind of live prototyping methods and solutions really enables us to get closer to the people that we design and helps us understand what are ways that we can make our ideas better so that people can use it more and eventually, in this case, create more impact.
I mean, thanks for sharing that. And I fall victim. I have so many reusable bags that I buy again, rebuy again, use, forget in my car. When you're going to the store, like, oh shoot, I forgot it. Then you have to rebuy them again at the grocery store. Or mostly when I go to like a TJ Maxx or a Home Goods, I'm always like, oh, buy more of the 99-cent bags. So how did you, when you were doing your research, how did you get, like, what did you hear from other people, and how did you design a better product that helped a consumer to remember to maybe bring the bag every time they go to the store or something like that?
Absolutely. And this is actually even beyond this project, but this is an insight that we keep going back to. A lot of the projects that we work on when it comes to the climate space, especially if it involves end users, comes down to behavior change. And designing for behavior change is quite complex. There's the power of habit, a lot of things that you need to design for, reimagine incentives. And really what it comes down to is uncovering what truly motivates the people that you are aiming to serve. So, for example, for a mom of 3, what really might be creating behavior change might be all about efficiency. But for someone who lives in a city and is not driving around, what creates behavior change might be ease of use. So it's truly about better understanding who do you design for and who's your target user and what moves them and what creates behavior change for them.
So can you explain that to maybe to listeners who haven't heard of design thinking before?
Sure, of course. So design thinking, as we use human-centered design, is a process that we use to strategically solve challenges that we are faced with. Really, the term human-centered design comes from the notion that we put people at the center of our process. And what that really means is that when we have a challenge at hand, what we do, the first thing that we do is to talk to people that we are trying to serve. So in the case of designing a product for a teenager, we would go and talk to teenagers and try to understand their needs and aspirations. And those needs and those insights essentially become the North Star of what we are trying to design for. So it's kind of this big shift from designing for what we think is right to designing for what we learned that is right for the people that we aim to serve. And of course, what's very fundamental beyond insights to human-centered design is and design thinking is to learn quickly and iterate faster. So we don't think of design research as one phase of the process, but we think it's at all phases. So we truly anchor on the notion that we keep learning from people and they design with us. We prototype fast. We get closer and closer to what we think is the right choice and right decision for the end users.
I love that. I mean, what does give you hope right now? Or like, where do you see the IDEO practice growing in the next few years? Or something different that you're planning or different areas to grow? Like, where do you see that headed?
I think what gives me hope in general about climate is seeing that climate is truly part of conversation everywhere. We built our climate portfolio with the acknowledgement about the moment that we're in, which is what we call the climate era. We truly believe that we are right now in a very different era, in a different moment. And similar to the previous eras, like the industrial era and the digital era, we think climate will be the baseline of everything that we do in this next era. If you remember when the digital era happened or was starting to happen, you would hear conversations about different industry leaders like restaurants or hotels saying, well, digital is all great, but I'm selling hotel rooms. Why do I care? Or I'm selling food. What is digital going to do to me? And now we stay at Airbnbs and get our food from DoorDash. So everything changed. So
Yeah,
we do
true.
believe that we are in a really, really important moment, which we call the climate era, where everything that we interact with, everything that we work on will have to be redesigned, which is why we think it's a moment of abundance for designers. It's a moment where we have all these questions to be answered, and our role as design leaders and as designers to come into the room with really good questions and partnering with organizations that have powers and capabilities to change the way that we move, the way that we eat, the way that we seek health. So I'm very excited about that, and that truly gives me hope.
Oh, I love that. And where do you find, or how do you find time to have space to admire other creative projects that you would really admire? Or, like how do you keep your creativity going? I mean, I feel like that's such a big focus of the work that you do. You're even talking about like making the right questions to ask people. How do you do that?
Absolutely. To reference Paul Bennett again, our former chief creative officer, he used to say, your job is inspiration. So you have to be inspired. I think it's really, really core to the way that we work at IDEO. Oftentimes, even in projects and programs, we actually carve out time to get inspiration. We look inspiration in what we call analogous spaces. In the climate portfolio, we often refer back to nature. When we are stuck and we are designing a really complex system, say for resilience or efficiency, we actually turn back to nature and we ask, how did nature solve this problem? So a lot of moments where I actually find inspiration is turning back to analogies from nature and seeing ways that we can unlock our thinking by being inspired by different parts and different environments in the planet. We have a wonderful partner, Tim Mickey, that he's a biomimicry expert that we talk to often when we get blocked. And a couple of weeks ago, actually, we had a great conversation with him. thinking about how to build resilience and what does resilience mean in nature? How does nature create resilience? And one of the examples that he has given me truly inspired me, and I've been thinking about it for weeks, is that essentially in nature, you have systems of resilience or you have systems of efficiency, but not both. So often a dandelion, for example, is kind of grown for efficiency. It grows really fast, spreads its seed really, really fast, and its whole point is to grow really fast at speed. Or you have different ecosystem like redwoods, right? Grows really slowly, has really deep roots. So often in nature, what you see when it comes to resilience is either systems that are built for redundancy. So if one fails, the other one would work, or systems that are built for efficiency. So they grow really, really fast, but maybe they die quickly. So what an inspiration to think about systems and how do you design a system for resiliency? Do you design for redundancy or do you design for speed? And what's the purpose of what you're designing for?
Oh, that is so good. I've really been enjoying this conversation. Are there any questions I should have asked you today that we didn't get to talk about?
I think you covered it all. Thank you for having me. This was very fun.
Oh my God, I've really enjoyed it. And it was also really just nice hearing your perspective too on that it's okay to tap other people when you're feeling blocked. I think a lot of times what I hear even when I'm working with founders that they feel like very alone and like the entrepreneurial journey is for them to solve in a silo, but it's not. And I love that you feel like you could just raise your hand and be like, hey, XYZ expert, I really need you to help like unblock me through this situation. It's really comforting to know that it's a team effort at IDEO and you're not working in a silo, which is so important when you're working on something climate related.
Absolutely. Maybe one thing that I'll add to that is that oftentimes we get a chance to be able to work with partners that are not just in the tech space, and also working with partners deeply involved in communities or in education or in nonprofit space. And really what I learned most from working with those partners that are not in tech is to get over our obsession of looking for the next big shiny thing. I think in the climate space, it's really easy to get caught up in kind of this pursuit of the next big thing. And what I learned from working with nonprofit organizations or academic organizations or even communities, indigenous communities particularly, is to look at what are the solutions that already exist and create space for those voices to actually have a place to bring some of those practices and teach to others.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Where could we follow along on your journey and all the great work that you're doing? Where's the best place to follow you?
Best place to follow us is through IDEO. We are writing and publishing and talking, have tons of events in the climate space, and we'll have more to come. So absolutely IDEO's website and our Instagram.
Fabulous. We'll do that. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Well, that's all for this week's episode of Climb by VSC. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Special thanks to Credo for their help in producing and promoting this episode. To visit any part of today's conversation again, you can find the full transcript on vscventures.com. Our thanks to Josue Ramiro for posting these every week. Lastly, if you've listened this far, please leave us a rating on Spotify or review on iTunes. It only takes a few seconds, really helps us out, and as far as I know, it's still carbon neutral. Well, that's all for now. We'll see you all next week on Climb by VSC.